And did you want to?
Yes. All right, hello friends. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Motd, for the pizza and the presentation. We will start by talking about some experimental infrastructure that has a 90% chance of just going up in flames. But if it works, it'll be super cool. So it's cybernet.defsec.club. If you go there, you'll see Galen's OpenSSH presentation. And if you try to click join, it'll bring you to this page. And then you click register. And then from here, you register. This is not your iLab stuff. Use something different, please. And then the secret that you need to register is defsec with an exclamation mark. Looks like that. So I'm going to register for Jake. His password is yeet. So you do that, and then you register, and then it works. And then you log in. Is everyone keeping up so far?
You post these instructions to the security club?
No. It's easy. Just register an account. The secret was defsec exclamation mark. That's the secret. We have a secret there so people can't just make accounts willy-nilly.
Secrets.
I think it's eat yolk. My password's eat too. It's not. Yeah, yep. Crap, I don't know. Hold on. So is everyone doing all right so far? Everyone has their accounts? No, not yet? All right. Cybernet.defsec.club if you need that. If you sorry.
Bad gateway.
Yeah, it should be on now. All right, how we doing? Accounts? I get 2 thumbs up. 3, wow. We're popping off. Okay, so you can log in. And then you want to go to your profile after you log in, and then set your iLab username. This is the only part that matters for now. So I think it's... Is that right?
At Jake.
I can't do that. Jake, is that your username?
That's right.
Okay, thanks. So once you do that, you save it, and then it works. Wow. Forms, right? It's crazy. And that will let it deploy to you. So profile, and then set your iLab username. You speak up.
Also, if anyone has questions, questions.defsec.club is up, as
Yes.
always.
And it is now being watched, unlike always.
Is this going to be in the DefSec section, I'm assuming?
What?
On iLab? I mean, DefSec?
Yeah, it will be.
Once it works?
Yeah, do you not know your username?
No.
I'm going to open this.
Yeah, don't log me in.
Wait, the people already did it. It's working. Okay, so yeah, some people already went to the next step. You save it, and then you go to competitions, and you click join.
You already did that.
Wow, okay, look at you cyber gremlins. So once you do that, it should deploy. So hopefully this is no more Galen's silly attendance script.
Man, my attendance script worked.
Yeah, one caveat for now, if you deploy it and you want to redeploy it, you can't do that. So you got to do that manually. Okay, bye.
All right. Round of applause for Shane. All right. Okay. All right. So, hi everyone. Welcome to DefSec. In case you didn't know that, that's what we're doing here. Thank you, Shane.
I have no clue.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to be talking about SSH, specifically defending it, but also just some general, like, SSH is cool, and this is why. So, yeah. If you haven't signed up for Cybernet, we'd like if you do that. Yeah, that's how you get the VApp. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to get started now. So, why SSH? Well, if we have a server let's say we have like a Raspberry Pi, right? And the Raspberry Pi is right here. Well, we could just plug in a keyboard to it and plug in a monitor to it and like talk to it, right? But let's say that Raspberry Pi is on the other side of the room and I'm lazy and I'm sitting down. I don't want to walk over there. So I could remotely send commands to it. Good idea? Yeah. What if the server is actually like 4 states away? Then you can't even say that I'm just being lazy and don't want to walk across the room. So we need to be able to send commands to a remote server. So what do we use for that? Any ideas? Telnet? Anyone heard of Telnet? Don't use Telnet. Telnet's bad. If we want to securely run commands on a remote server, which I guess we need to specify.
If you can't see your VF, that's my fault. Sorry, you're going to have to click join again in about 2 minutes.
Wow.
All right, cool.
It's deployed, but we didn't change the owner, so you can't see it. That was an oversight.
Anyways, as I was saying, yeah, so you want to securely run commands. SSH. SSH operates on TCP port 22 and is actually encrypted, unlike Telnet. Don't use Telnet. Telnet's a joke. Yeah, Telnet's bad. Okay. So what is OpenSSH? OpenSSH is an SSH server and also client. There's a few other ones. I don't know their names off the top of my head, but OpenSSH is from the OpenBSD project. OpenBSD is an open source Unix-based OS. OpenSSH has a client and a server. So the client is what you'd have on like your laptop to connect to a server. The server's, hosting the SSH server. That's where the commands are run. So what can SSH do? So it's a remote shell, as I said earlier. So that means you can log into something, run commands on it, all that fun stuff. You can copy files. So SCP or SFTP or whatever you want to call it now. Using the SCP command, you can copy files, which I'll go over in a little bit. What? Okay, cool. And you can copy files between systems, all sorts of fun stuff like that. And tunneling, you can also do some tunneling. So that means that you can, say I'm on my laptop here and want to access some service that's on a server in the cloud that I can SSH to, but I can't maybe see the service because there's a firewall rule. Well, you can kind of get around that using SSH tunneling. Generally, can definitely be used as a good thing, but also bad guys can use that so they can see some extra stuff in your network. So how do you use SSH? Well, you'd use the SSH command. Big brain. So just the basic syntax of it is SSH username @host. Pretty simple. You can specify a port if you want. So I'm going to open up my VApp and... What? Well, I deployed this one to myself a while ago, which I don't know why it's not on yet. That's concerning. Shane? Did you break something? Okay. Interesting. Shane, did you break that?
He broke the website.
All right, so some infra's breaking.
Yeah, 5 is a bad gateway for the website.
Yeah, not really sure why, but hopefully that's getting fixed somewhere.
Yeah, it's off on purpose because I don't want to use it.
All right, cool. Our infra always works correctly the first time. So I can show you locally. So SSH, your username, so user and then some host. Pretty simple. You probably know this already. You've probably used this for like logging into Kramer server dev.hostbin or Tom's server cs.ds Unix, I think. Yay, okay. This came up. So, maybe. Well, that's fun. So if you get the VApp, I think so. Try the other method. Sending a object. Okay, this is very difficult to see. I don't know why it's so small. Interesting. Okay, well, that's not going to work. Cool. So I will just use this then. Yeah, one sec.
Maybe if you just sat closer up, you could see. Shane.
What?
I said that you could maybe see if you sat closer up. You said zoom in, didn't you?
No, that's me.
Oh.
I can say the same thing.
Yeah, I will.
Can you see that now? Awesome, you can see that now. I don't know why the VApps are being weird, but Shane says this might work. Okay, cool. So SSH, that's the base command. So your username, so like defsec maybe, and then some host. So let's just pick completely random numbers. Don't worry, there's nothing at this box. And then you can SSH in. When you first try to SSH into something, it'll yell at you and be like, hey, do you really want to SSH into this? So the server has a private key, because encryption, and it sends the client its key fingerprint, and that's a way of knowing if your server's been compromised. So if, you say yes now, and it'll ask you for the password and you can continue to log in, but then later, say someone compromises your server or is more likely trying to man in the middle you, then they might not have the same fingerprint. So SSH will be like, hey, someone hacked your connection. That's about it. So yeah, SSH, enter your password, log in, everything's fun. So there's some more advanced options. So you can do like SSH TAC L or TAC R to do fun stuff. So that can be demonstrated. One moment. Like this. So this is port forwarding. So let's say that you have a server in the cloud somewhere and it has like a web interface running on it. You probably don't want to punch that through your firewall, but you might want to still access it. So with port forwarding, you can forward a local or a remote port and actually be able to access that web interface. So for example, I, at an undisclosed location, have a box that's in a network with a pfSense box. I don't have that pfSense interface openly exposed to the internet. However, I do have SSH on one of the boxes in that network openly exposed to the internet. So this is totally going to break, but it will look cool if it works. Can you still not see that? Maybe. Bigger. Okay. So if I SSH in into this server somewhere mysteriously on the internet, then I go to localhost. Not 44380. There we go. It's going to yell at me because it's a self-signed cert, but I can log in and boom, there's a pfSense interface. That's kind of cool. I'm hitting my internal pfSense interface from localhost, but tunneled over SSH. Yeah, kind of cool. Pretty useful. And of course, then I'm also logged in via SSH, so I can be like, this dude's logged in. Cool stuff. Yep. Okay. Glazed over looks. Everyone following so far? All right. You can also set up a SOX proxy. So say you're in a network somewhere. This is particularly has application for like a red team engagement. You're in a network somewhere. You have a box on that network, and you want to be able to talk to other things on that network as if they were local.
You can use the web app now, and I will manually change the
Okay, cool. I guess web app might be working. So you have a box in someone's network, like on an engagement. You have a local box, and you want to be able to talk to stuff from that box, but you want to use your personal laptop, which is maybe not in the network. So you can set up a SOX proxy, and then you point your browser toward this proxy, and it will forward your traffic so it looks like it's coming from that box inside their network. Pretty cool. You can hit internal stuff that way. Also, Red Team uses this in like CCDC to hit stuff inside of our network. So just because you have a firewall blocking stuff externally doesn't protect you. What is a SOX proxy? Good question. No clue, but it works. Any more questions? No? Okay. So what about the SSHD configuration? So SSHD is the SSH daemon, and supposedly VApps are going to work now. Supposedly. Hey, look at that. VApp loaded. Thank you, Austin. Maybe? Hey, look at that. Logged into my VApp. Cool. So in the VApp, you should have a server and a few clients. So you can SSH from the client into the server. Server is located at... Oh, good. It didn't change. Okay, .10. So 10.0.0.10 in your VApp when you get that is the server. So you can SSH into that. Default password on everything, which is DSU is the user account and password1bang is the password. Can you see that? Hopefully you can see that now. That is very large. So if we sudo to root, we can look at this SSH config. So in /etc/ssh, we have a few configuration files. The important one is this sshd_config. That's where the config for the server is. So if we open that up, can specify things like, what port it's running on. You could put it on a non-standard port. I think that you should probably implement better security practices than changing the port of your SSH server, but there are reasons why you might want it on a different port, like if you have multiple boxes with the same public IP address and for some reason don't know how to port forward things properly. And also like if it's an IPv4 or IPv6 only, stuff like that. So some of the important ones for security. Down here, we have pub key authentication. So what are public keys? It's over here. That's not the right slide. Okay, cool. Public keys. What are public keys? Public keys are, instead of typing a password, you just get a long string of garbage, and that's your password. So when you SSH into something, it will send your public key, well, actually, the server should have your public key, and you two can talk using public key, private key encryption, and enabling this in config. Wow, public key authentication, yes. So now you have to put your public key onto the server, and then you use your private key to encrypt stuff, send it over to the server. Server can, or actually no, they use your public key to encrypt stuff and send it to you. Then you use your private key to decrypt that and see what it is. Use the server's public key to send it back to them. That totally made sense in my head. Did that make sense to anyone else? No? Awesome. All right, so public key authentication. Let's try this again. Sorry. Oh, that's not right. Okay, so you generate a key on your client. You have a very large private key and a significantly smaller public key. You put the public key on this to the server. Then when you talk to the server, you say, hey server, send me your public key. The server sends you their public key. You can encrypt stuff with their public key. The server can decrypt it with their private key. And the server encrypts stuff with your public key, and you can decrypt it with your private key. That way, you can talk to each other, and it's secure. With pub key authentication, you don't need a password, which is awesome. And it's basically more secure. The only problem is that now your password to log into your server is like a key file on your server, or on your client. So, if someone stole your laptop, now they have your password. That's probably not a good thing. You can set some stuff like login grace time. So that's how long you are allowed to enter your password. So, if someone connects to your server and they just leave open the enter your password here prompt, that's holding a session open with your server. And if enough people do that, hundreds, thousands, maybe millions, depending on how good your server is, your server's not going to have a very good day. So probably good to set this to something. Like a minute. If you take longer than a minute to type in your password, maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. You can decide what you want to set that to. Permit root login. You should never permit root login unless it's like a very secure environment and you have a specific reason to allow root login. Root login. So the user root is on basically every Linux system ever. It has all the power. You probably know that already. You can always access root from an account in sudoers with sudo tac-i or sudo tac-s or even su root if you have the root password. But if keys are enabled and you're logging in as root, that means that now you have a key on your laptop that has full admin, full root access to a server. So if someone steals your laptop, now they can have full access to your server. Probably not a good thing. Also, security by obscurity is not a good thing. However, root is, since it's on every system, it's the most commonly used username for brute forcing SSH logins. So in the past week-ish, from my personal server, there have been, 120, or not 120, 1,200, wow, words are hard, 1,238 login attempts as the user root, and way less for other users. So root login attempts are about 60% of the total attempts on my personal server, maybe more, maybe less, depending on where your servers are. And the other ones of these are like, admin or whatever, Pi, which is Raspberry Pis. So disabling root login means that now they have to use a different account. That adds just a few more bits of entropy to someone trying to log into your server. Yes, Shane?
I have a question. The question is, everyone should have their VIA, theoretically, if you click the button, except for Mr. Medema, who does not appear to have a desktop account, Mr. Santoyo Lomar, who does not appear to have a desktop account, and have you logged into the desktop dialog?
Not yet.
There you go, h5.desktop.org. Does everyone else have those?
Hold on, repeat that, but slowly.
h5.desktop.org. Log in there with your easy dialog threads, and then we should be able to share it. If anyone expects one and does not have one, please.
I'm cool if I don't get mine. I'm messing around with this probably right now. So.
I just wrote limit on my own, but
Okay, everyone got theirs, hopefully, maybe. I don't know. Awesome. Yeah, so SSH configuration. Some of these, like max auth tries, not as useful in my opinion because fail to ban, which I will go over in a different presentation as it's significantly bigger. There's a bunch of other settings here. A decent amount of them you don't need to ever care about or touch. However, down here, allow TCP forwarding, gateway ports, and where's the third one? I'm blind. These two settings can help disable someone from, I can't find the third one, can help disable someone's ability to forward local ports to your box or from your box. Now, that's not really a good solution because if someone has access to your box, you can assume that they can jump off of that somehow already. So better to just keep them from having access to your box initially. But if you set both of these to no, then gateway ports is that TAC-D, which opens up the proxy port, and TCP forwarding is the port forwarding. There is a third one. I don't remember what it is or where it is. It's probably, there we go, permit tunnel. So those three will help you to not have people jump off your box. So down here, often in a config script, they'll just yeet permit root login yes to the bottom of your file. I don't know why, but Ubuntu's Server 2020's config does that, and also Red Team likes to do that. So it's a good idea to look at your SSH file, Sshd config file, and scroll all the way to the bottom, because sometimes there's just something like that there, and probably a good thing to remove. Let's see. So yeah, basic stuff. I already talked about most of this. Log level info. There is an Sshd server log. So let's see, var log auth log, and I should probably actually log into the server so that we can see that. So SSH into localhost, yes, and just something. And we look at auth log. you can see, wow, this is really hard to see. Maybe making it smaller will help. So right here, you can see it's authentication failed. Failed password for root. Maybe a little bigger. Yeah. So authentication failed and failed password for root. So based on your log level, that'll be more verbose if you need that. That password authentication. So password authentication is the normal authentication method as opposed to public key authentication. If you disable password authentication, then assume you're only using pub keys. And that might be a good thing, but then if you lose your public key or have a problem with that, you're kind of screwed. Can't really log into your server anymore. So probably a good idea to keep that on unless you have a specific environment. Yes, Shane?
Can you walk through the lab environment to make it clear why people have it? And also can you do that?
Can I what? Backflip?
So we gotta like caveman style this and go like step by step real quick.
Yeah. Authentication. Okay, yeah. So did you mean logging into it or the configuration? What?
Make it clear what people have it.
What? Okay, cool. So if you log into your lab environment, oh, interesting. That glitched out for a sec. Log into your lab environment and open up like client 1. To follow along, God, you're not going to be able to see this at all because you can't make the text bigger on this, I don't think.
Is resize work?
Resize is the window.
Then you try like Control Shift plus or Control Alt plus, see if that works.
Ooh, you can enter 1/2. That seems like a useful character. Okay, so you really can't see that at all. But if you SSH into the server, so that's going to be DSU at 10.0.0.10, yells at you, you can log in, everything's cool. I can actually do it the other way around. All right, let's try it the other way around. Since I can't zoom in on that one, we will flip server and client 1. So from the server, we can SSH into DSU at 10.0.0.11, which is client 1. So it's going to ask you if you want to connect. Password 1 bang is the password. Now we're logged in. So we're logged in from server to client 1. It should be the other way, but you would not be able to see anything I write if I did it that way. So from client 1, we are on the other box now. So we should probably change some of the config options to make them more secure. So sudo tac s, instead of just logging in as root directly, sudo tac s. Then we're going to go to etc ssh, ls, there we go, and edit that sshd underscore config. Wow. Typing's difficult. So let's actually change some of these options. So we can go down permit root login. That should be no. Let's set login grace time to like 1 minute. And pub key authentication, definitely want that to be enabled. Ooh. We can disable forwarding and gateway ports. Gateway ports are disabled by default, which is kind of nice. And there's nothing at the bottom of this file. So we can save that. So permit root login, no. Login grace time, 1 minute. Pub key authentication, yes. Then, whoa, down a little bit more. Allow TCP forwarding, no. And gateway ports, no. So with just that, now if we try to log in again, Well, actually, let's try to log in as root this time, right? Since we just disabled root login. So now root login still works because we haven't actually restarted the service. So if we systemctl restart sshd, always remember to do that after you change the config, or it won't actually apply your config, and then you won't actually be scared. But now if we try to log in, it's going to be like, maybe, permission denied, you can't log in. So we'll have to log in as DSU again, back in. Cool? Okay, awesome. So SSH keys. So from, you know what, I'm just going to change the host name of this, maybe. New client. There we go. Okay, so we're on the new client now, just to make that a little bit clearer. So if we, oh yes, keys. So in order to generate a private key, it's ssh-keygen, ssh-keygen, press enter, and it's like, hey, where do you want to save this? By default, it's your user.ssh/id_RSA. So that's okay. No password on that key. And now it generated a key. You get some cool random art. So if we go to .ssh,
Again, I have a question. What are keys used for again?
logging into your server without a password. So it generated this really big garbage-looking key file. And it also generated id_rsa.pub. So this has the much shorter public key. So if we copy this and SSH into DSU at 10.0.0.11, we still have to enter that password. But if we go to .ssh and edit authorized_keys, you might need to make that file. So log in via SSH. In your user directory, go to .ssh and edit authorized_keys. I hopefully spelled that right. And just paste in that public key, not your private key. That could be bad. Now, when we try to log in again, it just automatically logs us in, doesn't ask for a password. That's why public keys are nice. Also, they're very big, so basically very big passwords. So instead of having a super long password that you have to type out each time, now it's like a file, basically. Let's see. I think. All right, so that's pub key authentication. So there's some more advanced options. So that forwarding, if you want to allow that. Gateway ports. Most of these. Oh yeah. So chroot. You can chroot. So that will change your root directory to a different directory, which could potentially help if someone somehow gets SSH access in. Then they'll have kind of like a shadowed system in your other root directory. I'm not going to go over that right now because that's way more complicated. But yeah, some other stuff. So that max auth tries, max sessions, max startups is like how many people can start logging in at the same time, as opposed to max sessions, which is like how many concurrent users you can have. So you can have 10 people concurrently logged in, but max startups is, I think that's 10 people can start logging in 30 seconds. I don't remember what the 100 stands for. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have a question. What's your favorite SH configuration option? And why?
Good question. The host client option, which I'll go over on the next slide. So you can also set like specific users that can log in or specific groups. So if you wanted to only allow one user to log in, You could be like allow users, user 1, something like that, or allow groups, group 1. You can also, of course, deny users and groups. Banner, that's kind of a fun one. So if you notice, when I SSH'd into my server, it's like, hey, you get a free IP ban. Just kind of funny ASCII art. So if over here, so we log into the server and okay, so we log into the server and go to Etsy, SSH, Sshd Config, scroll to the bottom of that, somewhere in here, it's normally right here, banner none. So if we set this banner to, let's say, it's a file, so /etsy/banner, let's say, and then make a banner file in /etsy, maybe say like, hello, welcome to my server, something like that. So again, at the bottom of your SSH config, or well, not necessarily at the bottom, but where the banner option is, if you set that to /etsy/banner from none and uncomment it, then now you have this file that says like whatever your banner is, that's in /etsy. Now when we try to log in, maybe, oh, right. Haha, forgot to restart. So systemctl restart sshd after you change config options. And now we'll try to SSH into it again, and you can see right here at the top it says, hello, welcome to my server. However, if we tried to SSH in as a different user, say we tried to SSH in as like DSU1, it says this before you enter your password. So that's kind of cool if you have like a government system and you're like, by using this system, you are, work for us or whatever. If you log into the system, you're committing a crime, something like that. I mean, you already are under the CFAA, but whatever. If you had some banner that you want to display, like a lot of work computers will have that. This computer is for corporate use only. You could put that in the banner. Also, if you just want to say hi to Red Team. And, also the Motd. So we log back in and sudo again. You notice all this garbage that prints out every time I log in. It's like, blah, 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 programs, stuff like that. That's the Motd. So that's stuff that will print every time you log in. So that's generally located in Etsy Motd. Wow. It's right here. It's like, whatever. These programs are free software, blah, 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 blah. If you wanted that to be like, thanks for logging in. Something like that. So again, Etsy Motd. Now, when we log out again and log back in, it'll be like, thanks for logging in. That Motd will also display it when you start a shell. So like if you open up bash, or not open up bash, if you like open shell like that, it'll display that there as well. What else? Let's see. Oh, print last login. That's kind of a fun option. So if you noticed, every time I SSH in, it also prints this line right here. So it's like, hey, last time you logged in was this date at this time from this IP address. If you log into your server and see an IP address you don't recognize there that logged in recently, that might be kind of sketch. You might want this disabled. If you do, wow, okay, screen glitching, fun. If you do, then you add that print last log no to your sshd config. So the next fun part is match. So match allows you to set things for a specific user, specific host, specific group, something like that. So maybe you wanted, most users to be able to log in with only public keys, but maybe you had a backup user that also has a password enabled or something like that. Then you could do match user and let that user log in with password authentication, yes. But then in your main file, have password authentication set to no. Make sense? Awesome. Blank stares. Cool. You could also, force commands. So if you wanted, when one user comes in, like all it does is run a command and then log out. They do that for CTFs sometimes, though normally they'll just use netcat. Or you wanted a specific banner for one user or one host even. So if you had you wanted people coming from your internal network to get one banner and people coming from the external network to get a different banner, something like that. So if we want an example, that's not the right window.
You want to show them what are you looking at? You want to show them the tunnel for example of force command?
Yeah. Okay. So, So if we go to Etsy SSH Sshd underscore config, not CD, CD to SSH nano SSHD underscore config, and go all the way to the bottom again, there's normally one example match directive, but we'll add another one. So match, let's say we wanted to match the user DSU, and we wanted them to, force, actually that's probably a bad idea since we don't have a backup. So we'll say match user DSU1, so we don't lock ourselves out of our main user. Do force command, I know, like that, echo hi, something like that. Now, make sure to add a user. For that. So now we have a user have a user DSU1 that was just added, and they can SSH in, but they are force command to hello world. And I just realized I forgot to restart SSHD. I messed something up. What did I mess up? I probably spelled something wrong. So match, match user DSU1, not just match DSU1, because then it doesn't know if that's user or group or a host or whatever. So match user DSU1. There we go. And let's try that again. Broke the service. Okay, so this is why you pay attention and don't spell things bad. Yeah. That's fun. I know. So, well, I guess I did just restart it already. All right, so now, theoretically, if we SSH in as DSU1, password 1 bang, it just runs that echo hi command. Did anyone follow that? That was a little bit broken. Okay, so 3 people followed that. Awesome. So that was adding a match directive for a user and forcing them to run, echo hi. Probably not the best example, but maybe you have something like a jump user on your SSH box, so they can SSH into your box and then SSH into another box from there. You probably don't want them to be able to execute commands locally on that box, even though you are letting them pivot off of that box. So you would probably force command them to something that just doesn't do anything. Or, also you'd probably change the shell for that user and some other security measures. But an additional measure would be to force command like echo hi. And then even if they SSH in and didn't jump somewhere else, they just wouldn't have a shell. What is jumping? I didn't go over that. So right now we're root at new client. So we're on this new client box that's the old server, but can't see stuff. So let's say we wanted to SSH into client 2, right? We could just SSH into client 2 like that. It's going to ask us to make sure that we want to SSH in since we haven't done that before. And now we're in. So now we're into client 2, right? But maybe for some reason we can't SSH directly into client 2. So there might be like firewall rule up or something like that. So we would want to jump off of SSH off of a different client. So let's say we wanted to jump off of client 1 to client 2. Or, I mean, in this case, jump off of the server onto client 2. So first we got to make sure that I can do that in one command. Want to make sure that we enable the jumping in the config. So that's going to be allow TCP forwarding, yes. And now, hopefully this is going to work. So if we SSH into DSU at 10.0.0.12 and add tac j in there, DSU at 10.0.0.11. Now, it's asking us for DSU at 10.0.0.12's password. But when we ask who, we can see we're logged in from 10.0.0.11. Does that make sense? So basically, we went from our client, which is 10.0.0.10. We SSH'd into 10.0.0.11, and then from there jumped off of that onto 10.0.0.12. So this could be useful, like for how we did competitions, how we did the VPN and competitions previous years, where we would have an SSH jump box in the cloud that you could SSH into to get into the internal network, or what Shane does in some of his Linux things, some of his Linux presentations, where he's like, SSH, use this custom port. Does that make sense? Awesome. Right, so next, what's some good and some bad config arguments? So in any environment, I didn't go over protocol. So protocol is which SSH protocol to use. Protocol 2 is the good one. Use that. Don't use protocol 1. Permit root login? No. Ignore rhosts? Yes. So rhosts is maybe rhosts right here. So there's these files, user rhosts and server user rhosts. So, geez. Okay, so this one will do more of that server. That's more public key authentication things. So this is identifying the remote hosts. So when you try to SSH in, it's like the host identification initially, but with the server's key. That totally made sense in my head. It didn't make sense when it came out. It's basically another way of verifying the server and allowing people to SSH in based on which server they're coming from. Generally, you don't need that, so you can ignore that. Permit empty passwords. You don't want empty passwords. Like ever. I mean, why would a user have an empty password? That would be kind of sketch. Allow users. Maybe you want to allow certain users or allow like a certain group, employees or admin or something. In a more realistic environment, you'd probably want to enable a banner or public key authentication, stuff like that. You'd probably want rules for a specific subnet. You'd want, corporate banner, things like that. And in a competition style environment, you probably want to turn public key authentication off, because red team will, if they have any sort of code execution on their on your box, they can drop a public key, and then they can just SSH in. So one quick thing to go over. So that was all server config. There's also client config. So client config's nice because that allows you to do things like this. I didn't specify a user. I didn't specify even a valid host. So myserver.com is probably a real website, but that's not the actual URL of my server. So you can set up client config. So you can have a host like jump. So you could do SSH jump. Or this one I have set up SSH web, where it will just use a specific user and a specific host that you configure and a specific identity file for your private key and SSH into a certain box. So it just saves you from like typing out a bunch of stuff. So if we want to do that quickly, config. So we maybe have a host that's like client2. And we want to do user DSU host name 12, something like that. Now, when we do SSH client 2, just goes right in. Already knows everything. Cool? People understood that? Maybe? Awesome. All right, I think that's about all I have today. Yep, that's all I have for today. Any other questions?
Lusha wants you to check if SFTP bypasses.
If what?
99% doesn't, so. It doesn't.
Okay, cool.
In the Security Club Discord, in the DSU general, there's a message for filling out the feedback form at link.defsec.club/feedback. So if you want to help improve the meetings, just feel free to fill that out and help us greatly to make the meetings more interesting for you in the long term.